Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I see people coming in. Let me provide a couple more minutes so folks can join us. All right, so let's get going. Welcome all, ladies and gentlemen, to the Innovations in Violence Prevention and Series. I am Etienne Aldarondo. I'm honored to serve as the Executive Director of the Melissa Institute for Violence Prevention and Treatment in Miami. For 29 years, the Melissa Institute has been a trusted source of information on violence prevention, safe communities, and mental health worldwide. Today, more than 100 people from over 138 countries have benefited from the Institute educational resources and its trainings. In addition, we frequently consult with and provide research-based information on violence prevention and treatment to diverse organizations locally in South Florida and across the country. It is exciting to see that for today's session, we have dozens of registered participants from municipalities across the state of Florida and from various parts of the United States. Welcome all. Please be aware that the Institute's trainings, like the one you're about to be part of, and the educational materials accessible through our websites and YouTube channel are prepared with the guidance and support of the renowned members of the scientific board of the Melissa Institute, and they are available to you for free. All we ask in exchange is that you use this information and the materials we provide you to support your efforts to repair the world. And if your situation allows it, please consider donating to support our programs. Today, we are really excited about a special presentation on the power of youth development programs, lessons from the reconnection and replication of the 4H study of positive youth development. This is a special presentation for us because we have the honor of having with us what's arguably the most impactful positive youth development research team in the history of the field. And because two of the presenters today, Richard and Jackie Lerner, were important role models and important sources of inspiration during the beginning of my academic career at Boston College, where we were colleagues in the Lynch School of Education. I had the fortune as a young faculty of watching and learning from them, and as I aspired to forge a career as a community engaged scholar. And I want to thank Rich and Jackie for the inspiration and guidance. You should also know that the longest and most successful program that has ever been implemented in the United States to assist unaccompanied immigrant children, I developed using your model, the 5Cs model, and it is still being used in communities in the Homestead area. Some of the folks who are using this model are part of the presentation today in the audience. So today we have Dr. Richard Lerner, Bengstrom Chair in Applied Developmental Science and Director of the Institute for Applied Research in Youth Development at Tufts University. He's internationally recognized for his work on the dynamic relationship between individuals and their environments, which form the foundation of lifespan human development. Dr. Lerner's research focuses on how adolescents interact with peers, families, schools, and communities, and how these interactions can be optimized to support thriving. His work has helped shape a strengths-based approach to development and has advanced the integration of family, school, and community programs to promote positive youth development and civic engagement. Dr. Jacqueline Lerner is a professor of applied developmental and educational psychology in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development at Boston College. Her research explores the development of character and the positive growth of children, adolescents, and young adults within their family, school, and community settings. She has led and co-directed numerous longitudinal studies in the US and internationally, including the original 4H study of positive youth development, the Reconnection and Replication study, and the Compassion International study of positive youth development. Dr. Mary Buckingham is a research assistant professor at the Institute for Applied Research in Youth Development at Tufts University. She earned her PhD in child study and human development from Tufts in 2019. Her research centers on positive youth development with particular focus on the development of empathy. Dr. Buckingham serves as the project director of the Reconnection and Reconciliation and Replication of the 4H study of positive youth development, working in close collaboration, as you can imagine, with Dr. Richard and Jacqueline Lerner. This two-part study builds on the original 4H research by following participants into young adulthood and exploring how early developmental strengths influence health, civic engagement, and contributions to family and community over time. I will hear all the details about that in a minute. I encourage you to engage fully in our discussions, share your insights and experiences, as well as communicate with fellow attendees through the chat. And please submit your questions through the Q&A feature. Now, please join me in welcoming our lead presenter, Dr. Richard Lerner, who later will be joined by Dr. Jacqueline Lerner and Dr. Mary Buckingham. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Atione. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or at least afternoon here in Boston. So thank you very much. I am very impressed by the work of the Melissa Institute, and it's really an honor for Jackie and Mary and myself to have the opportunity to be with you today. So across the last quarter century, Jackie and I have been studying youth development and models of how to build the resources needed to help every young person use their strengths to move forward in a flourishing manner across the lifespan. That's the essence of our work and of the story I want to tell you today. So I'm going to just ask as I move forward for slides to be advanced. So can we have the first slide? So adolescence, even more so than infancy, is the major change period of the lifespan. Infancy, of course, involves enormous changes across the first 2 years of life, but adolescents, even more than infants, undergo all sorts of physiological changes associated with puberty and enhanced brain development, psychological, social changes, and the cultural impact of being at a particular time and a place in the second decade of life is impacted for young people, because young people, as compared to infants, have the cognitive capacities to understand what's going on, to use language, to mediate their coactions with the context, and even more, to express agency in selecting the sorts of contextual experiences they want to have. So adolescents have this capacity for change, and if we understand that capacity correctly, we can use it to enhance the lives of every young person. Next slide, please. So building on the strengths of youth, of which the capacity for change is the major one, youth practitioners have an opportunity to promote thriving, positive development in every young person. The challenges for youth development practice are to transform research evidence into programs that capitalize on the strengths of young people and to imbue them with the skills to make them active contributors to their own flourishing across life. So what researchers need to do in partnership with practitioners is to identify the nature and bases of positive change and discover the skills needed to assure youth that they are not only ready, but beyond ready to thrive and to lead others in thriving across life. Both practitioners and researchers have common collaborative challenges. They need to build a strong scientific base and translate it into effective programs. They need to create a model, a conceptualization of how youth strengths paired, integrated with effective programs can promote PYD with youth programs to make each young person thrive for the rest of their life. Next slide. The key problem, of course, is that models, your conception of what you need to do, your theory of change, if you will, are difficult to formulate in a useful way. But nevertheless, models are essential. All science is done based on a model. You know many of them. Einstein, who's depicted there on the left of my screen, developed a model of time, space, and gravity. Economists develop models of the economy. Sometimes those models are useful. There are models of different forms of government, and there are models of youth development. Models are the most basic element of the scientific method. Everything done in science derives from the model. And why? Because a model simplifies the enormous complexity of the world and enables us to begin to unravel that complexity in something that can be studied and used. But there's a catch, and it is a catch that involves the most fundamental facet of all scientific work. And go next slide. All models are wrong, but some are useful. The world-renowned British statistician in 1976, George Box, articulated this. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Let's explore why. Next slide. The world is incredibly complex. We can't study it as an integrated whole. Therefore, all models are approximations. They're not all of nature. They're an approximation of nature. Everything simple then is always going to be false, but everything complex is not usable. So since all models are wrong, the scientists can obtain a correct one by excessive elaboration. You may have heard of Occam's razor by William of Ockham. And he argued that scientists should always try to use an economical description of natural phenomena. And Box said, just as the ability to devise simple but evocative models is the signature of the great scientist, Einstein boiled everything down to E equals mc squared. So over-elaboration and over-parameterization is often the mark of mediocrity. The more we put into a model, the more and more difficult it'll be to ever use it. Next slide. Given that all models are wrong, Box proposed a very enigmatic question. How wrong does a model have to be but still be useful? In other words, how to create a useful model that serves practice as well as science. And this implies a critical point when we're working with models of human functioning. Such a model cannot be useful without researcher-practitioner collaboration. Let's see more about that assertion. Next slide. Researchers and practitioners have a common goal. We both want to enhance the lives of young people. The commonality of professional goals should be the motivation to combine our talents, to create mutually informative, that's why there's a bidirectional arrow in the slide, research practice integration in the service of creating a useful model, a model that is both has scientific rigor, but fulfills the knowledge of practitioners about the nature of the young people they're serving, their program, and the community. In past decades, many researchers led practitioners astray because they didn't have the humility to learn from practitioners. They had arrogance, and they developed models without the essential mutual information between researcher and practitioner. And they developed models that turned out to be either problematic or completely counterfactual. They just didn't work. Next slide. So how did we develop a useful model of positive youth development, one that built on the strengths of youth and aligned those strengths with what was going on in a youth development program. So let me give you a very, very brief history of the PYD perspective, something that's been going on since the late 1990s. So obviously it's going to be very brief. Next slide. The original model to which practitioners were exposed to by researchers was completely wrong. It was a deficit model that all youth have problems, and those problems make youth both dangerous to others and dangerous to themselves. This was started in 1905 with the first scientist to write about adolescence, G. Stanley Hall, who was at Clark University. He published a book in 1905, and he basically said that adolescence is a biologically based and inevitable, inescapable period of storm and stress, of upheaval, of disruption, of well-being and thriving. Next slide. Starting in the late 1990s, the positive youth development perspective, built by practitioners, began to offer an alternative model. Next slide. And the key person to lead this effort is just an extraordinary social entrepreneur on behalf of youth, Rick Little, who's still around and still working. But in 1989 to 1990 and through 96, he received a grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to organize something called the International Youth Foundation. And he introduced the concept of what it would mean to see a child who was thriving, who had positive development. And he defined positive development as composed by 4 C's: competence, not just academic competence, but social competence, vocational competence. Since, for example, in the United States, 2/3 of all kids who are in high school full-time work part-time. So vocational competence, confidence, a sense of self that I'm a young person who has the skills that can make valued contributions to myself, my family, my school, my community. Connection, positive relations with family members, parents and siblings, with peers, with teachers, coaches, mentors, faith leaders. And then character, a moral compass, a sense of right and wrong, a commitment to do the right thing even when no one is watching. At a conference in 1995, organized by the late Peter Benson of Search Institute, who developed a model of 40 developmental assets, 20 in youth and 20 in the context, that need to be aligned if thriving is to occur. At that meeting, someone in the group said there needs to be a 5th C, caring. That is, it's not just to have character, but you have to have the empathy, the sense of perspective taking, to put yourself in other people's shoes and see the world as they see it and care about those young people having positive lives. So caring, sometimes called compassion, became the 5th C. Rick said that's a very reasonable addition, but as he thought about it, he said, if those 5 C's develop to create a thriving young person, that young person will develop into someone who manifests a 6th C, contribution. That young person will be oriented to making a positive difference in their social world. And the idea was that kids who were at the height of those 5 C's would then become flourishing, positive models and mentors to those kids who were with them in life. So contribution, going beyond just thriving to really lead other people by contributing to the world, making others better, was the 6C that Rick suggested. Next slide. By the end of the 90s, Stephen Hamilton, a professor at Cornell University, who himself was a leader in research practice integration, said that by the end of the 90s, PYD had been understood and used in three overlapping but different ways. One as a developmental process. By that he meant the relationships between a young person and their world, mutually influential, that bidirectional arrow happening as a process through which you develop the 5 C's. As a philosophy or an approach to programming, that is, we want to align the program's resources with the strengths of each youth so that young person can develop those C's. And then, as instances of such youth programs, fostered on promoting healthy or positive development based on a model, not necessarily the 5 C's model, but on a useful model of youth development. Next slide. There are numerous youth development models, and here we put up just some of the major ones. Reed Larson, University of Illinois, Urbana, the study of motivation and active engagement of real-life challenges. The eminent developmental scientist William Damon said noble purpose, positive purpose, is a model of positive youth development. Again, the very eminent Margaret Beal Spencer. It's a very big set of jargony words. The phenomenological variant of ecological systems theory, built on Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ideas, but it stressed that the important thing in a young person's thriving is using their agency to cope with the conflicts and stresses of life, and particularly among minoritized and marginalized youth. Peter Benson, who, as I mentioned earlier, had developed a model of developmental assets, strengths in both kids and contexts that needed to be aligned. Ann Maston at University of Minnesota, who has worked on the study of resilience and how that could evolve into thriving. Resilience is just good enough behavior, which is often what's required for the very survival in challenging situations, but how that could evolve into thriving. And Jackie Eccles, who focused in on the motivation to create a fit between yourself and your world. And so again, motivation and agency. Next slide. So the PYD perspective, the model that Jackie and I have been using, has 6 ideas associated with it. Because of the potential to change, all youth have strengths. All contexts have strengths. These are the assets that exist in a context, and they're called developmental assets. These are the social nutrients, the resources needed for healthy development, and we'll give examples of that soon. But it's important to recognize that these assets are found not only in programs, but in families, schools, faith institutions, in the community more generally. And then the key idea is, if you can figure out a way to align the strengths of youth with those ecological assets, then positive, healthy development can occur. And the implication of that is profound, because rather than see a young person as a problem to be managed, we can look at a young person as a human resource to be developed. By aligning those strengths and the resources in the world of young people, we could be optimistic that it's in our power to promote positive development among all youth. We can create asset-rich settings that enhance the lives of all youth. Not every youth will be in the same place or will have the same resources, but every young person has sufficient strength because of their capacity for change, excuse me, to move forward. Next slide. So with that, building on Rick Little in particular, Jackie and I built a model of positive youth development. And our goal was to really understand the mutually influential relations between each young person and the resources that existed in their context. So the key ideas are not surprisingly, of course, aligned with those 6 concepts I mentioned earlier. PYD is optimized when youth strengths are aligned with ecological resources. And what are some of those resources? Things like intentional self-regulation, making good choices, having goals, purposes, having aspirations that allow you to identify and acquire the resources from the context that you need to actualize those strengths, and then using those strengths in valued activities. We'll repeat this in another way soon. Where do we find these? Individuals, institutions, collective activities, all are key assets for young people. And the 5 C's are the outcome of these bidirectional relations. And then following Rick Little, we hypothesize that if those 5 C's are developed in substantial ways, then contribution will be the outcome. Next slide. So when PYD is defined as competence, confidence, connection, caring, and character, when that's promoted, then youth will contribute positively to their communities by the end of their high school years and become active and engaged citizens. So what are those resources? Well, everybody has a list. And we actually looked at those lists. And in every list, there were 3 curricular components. Now, I should say that those components always had to exist in a safe place. Right now, you cannot promote PYD in Gaza because of the abhorrent things occurring there. You'd be hard-pressed to develop a positive youth development program in Ukraine because of the war that continues to impinge on the people in Ukraine. So you need a safe space that is physically, psychologically, and socially safe. Within such a space, 3 things will work in promoting positive development. First, every young person needs an adult in their life, at least one, who cares unequivocally for that young person. So you need positive and sustained relation between a young person and an adult. Within that relationship, what happens is life skill building activities, not just academic skills, which are of course essential, but what people call learning to learn skills or 21st century skills. I personally don't like the term 21st century skills because it turns out if you look at them, that those are the same skills needed in the 20th century, the 19th century, probably the 14th century. I'm old, but not that old. So life skill building, learning to learn skills, and then supported by having those skills and the mentorship of an adult, opportunities for young people to not only participate in, but to lead valued activities in family and school and community. These are the hallmarks of the theory of change, often termed the big 3 in youth development programs. And when in safe spaces, you see those big 3, youth will thrive. Next slide. So here's a quick pictorial representation of the Learner and Learner 5 C's model. Positive youth development occurs when you have those C's. 2 things happen. One, we predict that contribution will occur, but also reduced risk behavior, both in regard to both internalizing and externalizing behavior. So that's the conception that we've used for now more than a quarter century. Next slide. This is a more technical version of that simple model. So here on the leftmost box, you see that you have to put together the strengths of youth, things like intentional self-regulation, school engagement, hopeful future expectations. In other research, spirituality was a strength of youth. You put those together with ecological assets like social networks, institutions, individuals, resources. The 5 C's will develop, and you'll see contribution to self, family, community, and civil society, and a diminution in risk and problem behaviors, depression, delinquency, substance use. Notice the bidirectional arrow has a question mark, and that's because the relationship is not completely one of full negative correlation. That is, that there's a proportional growth in contribution and that coincides with a proportional decrease in risk problem behaviors. One of the things we've discovered is that adolescents are adolescents and they might engage in risk behaviors. But we've also discovered, with the help of a colleague from the University of Miami, Seth Schwartz, that when kids high in those 5 C's engage in risk behaviors, like sexual debut, they do so in a more responsible manner. So they're more likely to use birth control protection. Do adolescents engage in risk? Do even high PYD sometimes drink? Yes, they do, but they don't get behind the wheel. They have a designated driver. So it's not that it's a perfect negative correlation, but you see a complete you see an impressive distinction between the quality of risk being taken. Next slide. So we were given money by the National 4-H Council, which is in the DC area, to conduct a study of 4-H. The then president of National 4-H, Don Floyd, though, said, we don't want this to be just a study of 4-H kids. We want this to be a national study of American youth. And so the study began in 2002 and ended 10 years later. We studied the nature and bases of thriving across the adolescent years. And as the study continued, there were over 7,000 young people, 3,500 of their parents from 42 states participated. We tried to get Alaska and Hawaii, but we weren't able to. So all the states were from the contiguous 48. Of those 7,000 youth, 2,500 were 4-H kids, and we studied these youth longitudinally. We kept on repeatedly studying them from grades 5 through grade 12. Next slide. And the findings were consistent with the model. We saw that we could define 5 C's, and that kids who had those 5 C's showed evidence of thriving. They showed high levels of a 6C, which confirmed our model, contribution to family, school, community, and eventually by around 10th grade, they began contributing to civil society and democracy, and they had lower risk behaviors. Next slide. The findings suggested that 4-H was an exemplar of a PYD program because it was built around those big 3 that I mentioned earlier. By the end of the high school years, the 4-H kids became active and engaged citizens. They were positively connected to their community in whether it was a faith institution, other youth serving organizations, support networks for the most needy in their community. And we were very fortunate. We were sufficiently funded to have a very big research team, one of whom was then pre-doctorate Mary Buckingham, who then became our colleague and leader of our work. But we've published more than 150 publications, including books and chapters. And the 4-H study has been the most cited study of youth development in the United States. In fact, if the old adage that imitation is the best form of flattery is true, by the time our study completed, the Boy Scouts of America, when they existed as such, now there's Scouts of America, Girl Scouts, YUSA, Boys and Girls Clubs, the Science of Learning and Development Alliance, the United States Military Academy at West Point, all used the Learner and Learner model and described themselves as PYD programs. It is now the case that all national youth serving organizations say that they are PYD programs. And more than 60 nations around the world are using this model to frame their youth development programs. So we're very honored by that. So after about a decade, 4-H said, well, they finally said, Jackie began insisting on it as soon as we finished our high school sample, our high school data collection. But it took about 10 years for them to say, I think it's time that we try to reconnect with the original sample and maybe do a small replication to see current 4-H kids, how they're doing. So by this time, Mary Buckingham was Dr. Buckingham, and we were able to persuade her to join us to be the research director of the reconnection and replication of the original 4-H study. And we wanted to examine what happened to the teenagers who we had finished studying in 2012, and did current 4-H kids still show the same attributes as were shown originally by the sample we studied a decade earlier. Next slide. So in the reconnection study, and by the way, I want to just say all of this was done during the pandemic. And I don't think there's ever been a longitudinal study of the scope that we did, the reconnection and replication study, that has been ever undertaken and been so successful during a period of contextual challenge like a pandemic. And it's to the, we're all in a great debt to Mary Buckingham, because I can say with no false modesty on my part that this study would not have been done without Mary's incredible perseverance, grit, task stick-to-itiveness, whatever you want to call it. She enacted this study and has been just a great colleague in doing so. So we followed up on the original 4-H study 10 years after we had said goodbye to them. We didn't have any resources to follow them, and many of them had email addresses that were no longer functional. Mary became a tracer of lost persons and reconnected with several hundred of them after a 10-year period of silence. And then we only had enough money to do a small replication sample of youth, and we'll tell you about that. But in both studies, we capitalized on the progress in measurement that had been made across the 10 years between the end of the first study and the launch of the second study. So we continued to study PYD, contribution, self-regulation, the big three, but we added new concepts Under Mary's leadership, we began measuring empathy. Under the suggestion of Carol Dweck from Stanford University, we developed something called growth mindset in young people, and still other attributes. Next slide. So here's some of the highlights from the Reconnection study. We were able to get 332 young adults who completed the study, and then we had 20 of them who we followed up with in-depth interviews. So the 332 participated in a quantitative assessment, and then 20 in extensive follow-up interviews as qualitative follow-up. So young people who participated in 4-H when they were younger reported high levels of PYD still, high levels of contribution, and high levels of well-being, as well as high levels of all the other concepts we had measured: purpose, hopeful future expectations. Again, they had hope even during the height of the pandemic. They had great relationship skills. They knew how to be a contributing partner in social relationships. They had self-regulation skills. They had the ability to select positive goals, how to optimize getting resources for their goals, and increasingly, when goals were blocked, or we're all human, we fail, how to bounce back from that. And critically, they became leaders. They were beyond ready to thrive. They became leaders to facilitate other people's thriving. And all these young people reported that participation in 4-H programs greatly influenced all of these skills. Their recollections were, and we were very careful not to have leading questions. They brought up the fact that 4-H had contributed to their confidence, competence, caring to enact all of this. Next slide. So this is a word map. So we asked the question, is there anything else you would like to share about how your past 4-H participation impacts you today? This is from the survey in the Reconnection study. So here you see this wordle. Skills was the major word. It gave me life skills. It created a sense of community. And then if you look at what they said, skill building, not surprisingly given the wordle, was the most commonly mentioned contribution of 4-H, things like public speaking, leadership, teamwork. 4-H gave them opportunities to build positive relationships. It taught them about the importance of community. It gave them the motivation and the comfort to get new experiences in life, to learn skills that they wouldn't have already been on the path to acquire. And it gave them work readiness. It taught them how to move forward with a purpose towards building a successful young adult life. Next slide. So I'm not going to go over this in detail. I'm not going to just read you these are actual comments. So you see here that it shaped their career goals, their skills, the attributes of PYD. It was other than home life, it was the most important aspect of your youth. And it was a safe place for them to develop their skills. Next slide. We asked another question. Are there aspects of your experience in 4-H that still have an impact on your life? So they mentioned, here are some comments. They mentioned that it taught them to understand their role in the community and the role of government in community and in picking careers. Their confidence to be a public speaker, and enhancing their work effort and their ability to say, okay, I may not have this skill, but let me try to see if I can develop it. Next slide. Can you tell me a bit about the skill sets you learned while involved in 4-H? Trying new things, skills to work on and fix parts of their lives, and public speaking, and being able to work with different types of people under different time limits. Next slide. Did your time at 4-H encourage you to pursue your purpose? Yes, it did. To accept their strengths and limitations, and here I'm shy, but I get up in front of people, and I'm still able to fulfill my goal to be a teacher. A sense of paying it forward. I gained so much from 4-H. I want to pay it forward to make the world better for my kids and for others. It helps you provide a lifelong purpose. Next slide. Here we can turn to the replication. We studied 465 young people in their early adolescence, and we did surveys, and we did 3 surveys during the pandemic. Obviously, we did this all online. We focused in New York for practical reasons, because we were able to get, 1, it's close to Boston. 2, we were able to get a much more diverse sample in rural and urban kids, but we did go to some other states. And reflecting a generation earlier characteristics, the characteristics of young people who we just finished reconnecting with, they reported high levels of positive youth development, the presence of the big 3, well-being, an ideology to contribute, a purpose in life. They were very hopeful, again, during a pandemic, hopeful future expectations. A new measure, they felt known and loved because of their experiences in this out-of-school program, and they had high school engagement. They had moderately high levels of contribution, actions, actually contributing to their community during a pandemic, which was high. That it was at any level was impressive. This was a moderately high level. Relationship skills and intentional self-regulation skills, pursuing purposes, having the skills to garner the resources, compensating when things went awry. Next slide. So the highlights from the replication study, the 4-H youth reported they were engaged in 4-H programs, even though most of it was remote. It was a highlight for them during the pandemic. And several of the youth reported that, sorry, being part of 4-H was highly important in their lives. Next slide. So what are the key takeaways from 4-H program procedures? What can we take away from both parts of the replication and reconnection projects? We see that 4-H is a program that illuminates the strengths of young people and is a program that promotes flourishing. So 4-H, as we discovered in the 2002 to 2012, continued into the 3rd decade of the 21st century to promote positive development. And what we see is those mutually beneficial relationships that we talked about earlier in building our model, where there's a bi-directional relation between a thriving young person and a caring, competent adult continues to be a hallmark of the lives of people who participate in 4-H, both within their program, but in their families and communities. And what we see proof of is that across generations, the relationships that are built in 4-H not only describe a flourishing individual, but an individual who is contributing to democratic citizenship that, especially now, we hope to see in all thriving young people in our country. Next slide. 4-H youth are particularly hopeful about the future. Again, so impressed about the fact that a lot of this happened in the pandemic. There's been a mental health crisis in youth development in our country, in part brought on by the pandemic. But I can't say there was total immunity from mental health challenges, but 4-H was an effective inoculation. 4-H continues to promote positive youth development among diverse youth in the program. And 4-H young people become young adults that are active and engaged citizens. And 4-H youth are leaders in ways that create a vibrant civil society in our country. They're doing well for themselves and they're doing well for others. Next slide. So what have we learned? We can go on and on, but here are some key takeaways. The sort of theory of change, the model is useful in that it shows us things that can be done to guide a thriving young person into a productive and successful adulthood, at least the early adult years. We continue to analyze these data, and with those data, we'll be able to determine what assets are related to critical life events, such as going to college, successfully entering the workforce, or contributing to our society. We can describe the strengths of young people from adolescence to young adulthood, and the ways in which participation in programs such as 4-H that offer those big three promotes flourishing and provides a foundation for active and engaged positive citizenship. These young people are individuals who are prepared to thrive, and it's because of the connection, we believe, that we were able to establish an ongoing relationship now for 2 decades between the researchers and the 4-H practitioners. Next slide. So what's the formula, if we can use that word in quotes, for developing a young person who's thriving? So competence, confidence, character, connection, the big three equals contribution. But competence, confidence, character plus caring is moral contribution. That is, it becomes the moral imperative when you care to use your skills to make the world better for self and others. So that's the big three compared with contribution leads to, if you will, moral contribution. That is, it is not only the right thing to do, but if I want to be a moral person, it's something we have to do. It may be nothing more than the golden rule, folks. Do unto others as we would want others to do unto us. 4-H provides people who believe that and provide leadership in their social network and community doing that. Next slide. So if we're right about our conjecture about moral contribution is manifested by a person who serves as a steward for service, for civil society, for social justice and democracy. It's a person of character who is not just to do something, but to be committed to moral ideals because they have a generalized respect for all humans. And it's a genuine concern for social justice and for being and for the well-being of all citizens, including the poor and disenfranchised. Bill Damon and his colleague and his wife, Ann Colby, wrote a piece in 1996 for the Christian Science Monitor, where they talk about this. And one way you could think about this is by thinking of the sample case of Ebenezer Scrooge, who certainly was competent. He had confidence. He was connected because he gave out money and had business partnerships that were successful. And he probably thought he was a good person. He didn't cheat people. He, expected to do the right thing vis-a-vis business, but he didn't really have that moral component. It was the three spirits he encountered on Christmas Eve that gave him that moral contribution. And so he became a pillar of his society. Remember the end of the Christmas Carol? And so 4-H doesn't only imbue people with the ability to thrive personally, but to create a self and society connection where your thriving and the thriving of others are mutually connected. Jackie and I have worked in Uganda, Rwanda, and one of the things, and South Africa, and one of the things we've been impressed with is the Zulu conception of Ubuntu, that I am because you are. That is, we work with and for other people. And that's the sort of self-society connection we see as arising from programs like 4-H. Next slide. So here's the important implication. I've said at the beginning, and I'll repeat here, that all young people have an opportunity to have their lives enhanced by identifying their strengths and understanding the resources that exist in their context and figuring out a way to align that. We've talked in general here in this hour about these connections, but we have to remember that no two people travel the same pathway across life. How do we create a life for and with others? And here we return to Ubuntu. I am because you are. I am beyond ready to live a life that has noble purpose, that matters, and that has positive meaning for self and for others. The next step in this work is to find ways that we could reach every young person, because ultimately getting an average effect for a group that 4-H produces 6% more of this and 20% more of that. That means that some kids are getting more than that percentage, some kids lower. How do we take the lessons learned about the basis of flourishing for kids in a program and make sure that every kid is maximized? That is the next step for youth serving programs. Next slide. So if we find that, we'll find the strengths in every young person. And next slide. Here we see two young people who are becoming stronger through 4-H. And the taller one is our granddaughter, Isla, age 7. And the younger one, who is not at all camera shy, is Soleil Learner, age 2. And they were at this is from August 24, so almost a year ago. They were at a 4-H event here in Massachusetts. So let me stop there, recoup my voice. My allergies have caused me to cough a little bit during the presentation. I hope it hasn't been too distracting, and see if there's any questions out there. And if they're hard questions, Jackie and Mary will answer them.
Yeah. Before we get there, I just want to reach Jackie and Mary. Thank you for dedicating your life to this. I mean, this is extraordinary for anybody who cares about youth, who care about the world, who care about helping others develop a moral compass in their lives that promotes a better way of living for everybody. Is incredible to see what you've done. And when we get into this kind of work, many of us aspire, it's a leap of faith. We go into this and we hope that it will have the effect that 20 years from now, we can go back and document that it had the effect that we thought. You guys have done it. And that's really, I imagine it's immensely rewarding for you to know that you were in the right track, that what you thought was right and had the effect that you wanted. So I want to thank you for that and for doing it and for putting out there inspiration and support for the rest of us who day in and day out work trying to do this. We have in the audience today many people who have programs in the communities that we work with here who attempt to basically strengthen the youth in their communities, the families in their communities, the churches in their communities. And I know that for them it means a lot too, to hear from you that there's data in support of what they know, what it feels to be right for them. And now, along those lines, I have a couple of questions for you. One is that, do you have like a set of resources of guidelines for organizations considering the implementation of positive youth development programs? Do you have I know that you often talk about the principles and to really guide as a way of thinking and framing everything that is done intentionally within the organization. Do you have like a checklist of guidelines that they can, if you're considering doing this, pay attention to X, Y, and Z?
So yes and no.
Okay.
Let me give the yes part. I mean, I'm answering like a professor on the one hand and on the other hand.
Yeah.
So yes, we have, as I mentioned, over 150 publications. Many of them are practitioner oriented. Other people have joined us in writing about that. Mary Arnold from National 4-H Council has a book coming out, I think in June. Is that right?
Yeah, I think June, toward the end of June, there's a practitioner book that we've contributed a couple of chapters to, among with lots of PYD researchers and practitioners. That's coming out next month.
Who's the author, you said?
Mary Arnold is the first editor of the book.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Can you put in the chat, Mary, the reference to the book?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of the questions that I had is about that a member of the audience is asking for suggested readings so that they.
So if you could share our emails.
Yes.
We have measures that we've developed. One of the things our lab had to do, because there was a deficit model world, there were plenty of problems of risk and problem behaviors out there, depression, anxiety, et cetera, but not a lot of measures of positive things. So one of the things our lab had to do over the years, and when I say our lab, it's our lab and Boston College lab. It's not just, this has been a complete partnership Jackie actually ran the first study completely. And then Mary took over that role for the replication and reconnection. We have measures that we share for free. We have reprints, and any book that we've published, we share for free. We articles, other people's articles, we can provide that. If you give our email,
Yes.
We could tailor the selection, because again, there's over 150 that we've just done.
Okay.
But we're familiar with this all over the world, so because it's being used all over the world, so we can point people to a subset that they might want in particular.
Okay.
And but Jackie teaches a course in PYD, so she could give you her reading list from that course. But that's the yes part. Okay, and this goes to the no part is that every program is distinct, and every kid in the program is distinct. You know, what something that works for kids in Miami may not work for kids in Idaho or in New Hampshire, or in we were in Uganda and Rwanda. For those of you who know the geography of Africa, they share a border, but the countries are completely different. So programs that the PYD program, we did this in collaboration with Compassion International. The PYD program in Uganda is very different than the PYD program in Rwanda because of the different histories, for example, of those two countries. So we have to tailor any advice we give or any work we do, because we've also been asked to come in to various programs, and we can't do that for nothing, to get a contract or a grant. What we do is we tailor it to the specific community context. Mm-hmm. Any resources we have, we give away for free, though. So it's not only the program is different, but each sample of kids are different. Yeah. So go ahead, Jackie. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to say, that being said, he's absolutely correct. Each community needs to work on different outcomes that they want to see, et cetera. But there are some generalities, like the big three. Make sure individuals who care about kids, individuals we found were the most important resources in the first 4-H study. Individuals who want to develop caring relationships. Once that general set of relationships is there, knowing the kid, caring deeply about the kids and what you want to accomplish. And then, of course, life skills, leadership, those things are pertinent to every program. It's just the specific context. If you look at Rico Catalano's work in Miami, I think that's where he is, or Florida somewhere, is he's looking at very high risk communities and using the PYD frameworks from Benson and us and et cetera, and developing his own to a specific set of problem behaviors or challenges, but still pulling in the strength-based model to address them.
And I have a question, the follow-up question to this. Are there any parts of the program that were interdependent to parent education and involvement, that basically that are pertinent to the parents' education and involvement? Many other organizations that serve youth here also aim to strengthen the family unit and work with the parents. Are there things that you wish that the parents also learn and know, so that they can also be, promote the growth of the kids in the direction that you aspire?
Yeah, so in 4-H, like in scouting, parents are often the leaders of 4-H clubs or 4-H or scouting clubs, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. But one of the things we discovered is the big three is not only part of the formula for thriving youth in programs. Positive parenting relationships with their children, life skill building in a way that creates agency in a kid, not a helicopter approach, but an agency promotion approach, and then consistent with that, giving kids the opportunity to use their skills, not only in the family, but outside the family. When that's done in families, we've discovered that those have more of an impact than what's happening in a program. It is still the case that every program effect can be overridden, so to speak, or more variance accounted for, have a greater impact for, if it comes from the family. The family is still the most important social entity for a kid's positive development.
A question here from one of our founders, Dr. Susan Keeley. In particular, she wanted to know about what specific program, Jackie, you were referring to, if you have the information about in Miami. If not, we can get it later from you.
Yeah, I see that. I just said, I know it's Rico Catalano's work. I will have to remind myself or look
I
up.
think he's in Washington, state of Washington State, Catalano. Is this Catalano and Hawkins?
Yeah, but they were in the South for a while, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, he may have the program there, but his academic appointment is University of Washington, Seattle.
Okay, so yeah, it is Catalano and Hawkins. I use it in my class. I'll have to, I don't know if I know the exact name of the program, but I know he was using a lot of the PYD-based frameworks to address very high-risk behavior
Yes,
in
right.
marginalized youth. And it was one of the first times it came into focus that it was a program using PYD, not a prevention program per se, but a promotion program to prevent risk. And so I think he got a lot of accolades for using that. But I can look that up and get back to the group for what I know, or else you can do a broad search and see what publications of his you might want to read.
I have a comment and wonder if you have some experience about this. When we set out to use the positive youth development, your model, to develop the program for unaccompanied minors, it was an initiative called the Immigrant Children Affirmative Network. One of the things that we learned is that the unit that required the biggest intervention and change was the organization. The organization itself, there were little jails where these kids were set up. So they were not set up to promote the type of values that you aspire to. And so the program and the intervention became, and we specifically educated them on the 5 C's. We educated the staff, we educated the providers of services, and developed then the activities for the kids guided by those principles. And so I wonder if you found in your experience that type of situation where the unit of intervention goes way beyond the individual. The kids, it's a relational model, but you sometimes need to really prepare those relationships to engage the kids fully in a meaningful way.
Well, it's certainly correct. You need to do that, but we've not studied that per se. But Mary or Jackie, if you want to chime in.
I think for 4-H, Mary Arnold leads a lot of that work with the 4-H thriving model, which I can link in the chat. And I know they do a lot of work with the different 4-H programs to have them set up to be able to deliver the PYD model throughout the 4-H system.
Right. Because if you think about it, the readiness of the organization to deliver this is key. It's very, especially given the added unwanted pressures that are being thrown into anybody who's trying to do good for our communities here in South Florida. You know, how do you really strengthen the organizations and according to it to get them ready to do this? You know, and it's something that worries me all the time. I'm thinking about it all the time because that's the place, that's the incubator for positive youth development, basically, for many of these kids. That's what obviously their families do, and in a big way. But anyhow, so any insights or recommendations that you have of things that we can share with our community, that would be great.
Well, there's going to be, again, some of that in the Mary Arnold book, but we have done a lot of evaluation of programs, including staff performance, but
Okay.
we have not, we ourselves have not been a train the trainer
Okay,
organization.
okay.
But you might be able to find a lot of materials on the 4-H website. Some might be behind a wall because it might just be for the youth leaders and the people who are enrolled, but there's probably a lot of things you can get. You know, and anything you see that you might want access to, we know, of course, a lot of people over there that if you're finding difficulty, but you want to see a particular page. I do see a note here about, so I posted the Rico Catalano. He is in Washington, communities that care, but I have a memory of him doing things in Miami. Communities that care models, prevention science, promotion and prevention science. He got a lot of awards, so I've linked that. Just to answer this, and I think Mary and Rich will agree that I don't think we know that 4-H is effective in youth in the justice system. I don't know people doing that work. I do know that in Massachusetts, one of Rich's students began, and one of my students also chimed in, doctoral students, while they were here, to infuse PYD concepts and program type things into the models that they used with adjudicated adolescents. So instead of a punitive, completely deficit approach, they did have an incredible amount of work went into this too. I think you remember, Rich, with Roby, and then with my student Caitlin. But I don't think 4-H per se as an organization has an impact, has a space where they deal with adjudicated youth. Do you, Mary or Rich?
No,
know?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Not that I know of.
Something to think about, and the person who had that question is the director of our the Office of Neighborhood Safety in the county,
Yeah.
Nika Holder. So Nika, if you have some thoughts about this and want to explore this further, you let us know, and we'll make sure to serve as a bridge to the learners and his teams, and Mary in Tufts and Boston College.
You should be able to find something in the Department of Juvenile Justice in Massachusetts. I think one of my students recently looked into if they had made any progress. I think there are some broad-based concepts and frameworks that the justice system portends to be using, but we haven't had any personnel related to us that have been able to sort of document whether that is really happening or not. So,
Wonderful, wonderful. We have here Juanita Rivera saying that excellent information. We are currently using Life Skills, which I guess it's a program that you're familiar with too. So it's great to know. There is you should know in the one of the things that I was so incredibly pleasantly surprised when I moved from Boston to Miami, that is that even as a young city as we are, still continue to be young in reference to the old cities of the Northeast, the maturity of the nonprofit sector here and the level of engagement is really above and beyond what you would expect. And in fact, the level of coordination and the openness that they have to integrate models and evidence-based practices in what they do is, I remember trying to convince organizations in Boston that they needed to do things the right way, and because they always thought that they knew what they were doing. And here you have the opposite, a desire for people to really, yes, help me out, let's do it, work together. And in that context of bridging the practitioners with the researchers, I ask you, because I'm not sure if you offer this, one of the things that every time that we make a presentation that we do offer a course on an aspect that it touches the interests of our community and the needs of our communities, we get requests. We get folks who said, can you really come help us develop this, come hear our ideas. Would you be open to be zoomed into some of those conversations, kind of like not as an elaborate consultant, but just perhaps to have the expert input, since I could play the expert after reading more of your stuff, but sometimes that with your experience, you could provide guidance in a minute that would take weeks even for AI to distill. Is that something that you are able or capable of providing that technical assistance that way? Maybe it's a question more for Mary, because Mary might be the one who answers that call.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I was typing a
And-
book into the chat.
No, the question is offering technical assistance in the form of maybe being part of a Zoom conversation or Zoom with an agency that wants to develop and has done the legwork to develop a positive youth development program.
We've all done that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We offer that all the time.
Okay, good.
On site, through Zoom, etc. Yeah, we program design and evaluation is one of the things we do. We did that for Boy Scouts of America. We did that for West Point, which is probably our most famous consulting.
All right. So, thank you very much. Question here. Were you able to find links in the Reconnection study between 4-H youth and higher levels of success in adulthood? Not financially specific, but more in setting and reaching their personal and professional goals.
Yeah, I think this goes, Mary, to what we learned qualitatively. So I hope you could help answer that.
Yeah. We, I'd say in almost all of the conversations that we had with the 20 interview participants, that without prompt, they were able to connect their experiences as a kid or an adolescent in 4-H programs to either that the skills that they're using in their everyday life today or in their careers, or specifically in finding their purpose. Like there was one participant who stood out to me that was talking about learning about how governments function in her 4-H program. And then later on, she ended up being a part of her state government as her career. So we definitely were able to find those links in the Reconnection study.
Fantastic. Let's see. We'll give you an opportunity also to the presenters. Do you have any additional observations you want to share with us, or any questions that you have for our audience and that you might be curious about?
Well, I mean, I'm always interested in real life, like seeing PYD in the real life youth. So if anyone has anything exciting to share about that, I teach an applied course in psychology, in applied developmental psychology, to practitioners and mental health professionals who want to infuse PYD into their work. Some are going into the mental health profession, some are going back into sort of higher ed settings, and some are in the community. And I just feel like they always have these aha moments when they see PYD happening. I didn't know if you wanted to share any of that. It's what keeps us going as researchers, when we can visualize the youth. I don't know, Mary, if you
we're always staring at the data, and sometimes are less so involved in actually, witnessing a program happen.
But I tell my doctoral students when we're looking at data that I actually can see the youth behind it. Like I don't know if it's just me, if I'm magical or something, but I really do try to visualize these youth. And then one of them said to me, okay, what does the one you're looking at now look like? And I couldn't answer that. I just knew that they were there, right? So that's what we are so thankful to you as a community of youth practitioners and people involved with youth to keep this going, so that we can keep measuring and helping you understand what you're actually doing.
So I have a couple of other questions, and I'll let folks in the audience think about that. Perhaps some of them get the courage to kind of like raise their hand and share that experience with us. is that funding has become a real issue for nonprofits and
Oh,
youth.
yeah.
Do you have any advice on trying to start or maintain a PYD program on a shoestring budget?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's an age-old question. It seems like as long as I've been in this field, the shoestring budget, people relying on the goodwill of volunteers. You know, there are a lot of paid people in 4-H that are professionals, but they rely on so many volunteers. I don't know, funding. I don't know, Rich. We've talked to some funding. We've gone to some meetings about funders who have particular interests in particular outcomes. Remember, we went to that foundations meeting once, Rich?
Yeah.
In
But the world has changed. You know, I just taught a course, a graduate seminar to doctoral students in grantsmanship. And we started just before all the cancellations of federal grants. I don't know if you heard that just yesterday, Trump decided to not only freeze the money at Harvard, but to actually take it away. He canceled, I think, $2 billion in grants at Harvard. Canceled it. So it's a very uncertain situation right now. So the rules pre this administration versus post are very different. So I think the best advice, this is what I told my graduate students and colleagues around the country are talking about this. We need to seek support from different sources. And I think there are major corporations, businesses throughout all of our communities that have an office of community involvement, civic engagement, community collaboration. They come under different names. So, corporate responsibility is another name for them. And they give grants. For example, we have in Boston, we have Converse shoes, which are sneakers, right? Converse is a brand that's now owned by
Nike.
Nike, right? Thank you. And so we have two of our doctoral students doing an internship at Converse, and they're working in the Office of Corporate Responsibility. And what they learned is that Nike, without a lot of fanfare, universities don't know this, but any community organization in the Boston area that involves youth sport, they are considered to give grant money to. Now, many people don't think of that. But if you can look at the offices of, you have tourism and hotels throughout Miami, and retail stores that are chain stores, and they probably have a similar office, whether it's called corporate community responsibility, social responsibility. I would look there. I would look at United Way as a source of potential support. If there are community foundations that are raising money and interested in youth development, you should look there. Boston, you know, the Boston Community Foundation is a major source of funding for people in academia here in Boston. So I think when we think of, I wouldn't be encouraging now to go to the federal government. I don't know the situation of state government funding in Florida. I know it in Massachusetts, but that obviously by definition varies state by state. But I know that these multi-state, sometimes multinational organizations, corporations, companies, as well as those in Miami, I would, or in Florida, I would imagine that the Disney Corporation has a social responsibility office that is focused on youth development.
And the Dolly Parton Foundation?
Right.
Is that in Florida?
Not in Florida, but I think they give funding. US.
Nationwide. Hmm.
Oh, well, that leads me to another thing. So here in Boston, one of the organizations that gives money to youth serving organizations is the Red Sox Foundation,
Oh,
Mhm.
right.
the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
Last time I looked, you had some good professional teams in Miami. They must have corporate they have the equivalent of the Red Sox Foundation.
Yeah,
So
we do.
I think we have to be creative and look at sources other than the usual suspects, because the usual suspects are themselves wiped out. I spoke. I was at a meeting of the American Educational Research Association a couple of weeks ago in Denver,
Mhm.
and I spoke to a very well-known professor at Northwestern University. And overnight, she had a very vibrant lab that was completely wiped out because her Institute for Educational Science grants, all three of them were canceled.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
overnight, she had to, the money disappeared. She had to let her staff go, and graduate students lost their funding.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go to the conventional sources of funding. I hope that helps, but this is the question everybody across the nation is asking.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a critical question. Now, I'm just in response to your question. The Miami Heat Foundation, they are pretty active, also, and they had defined for years now their mental health and youth support as a core.
There you go. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised, but I'm pleased. I'm very pleased to know that.
I mean, I don't know anything else about the inner workings, but this I know that that's what they do. And well, this is great. One question, and again, I'm glad that you take the time to acknowledge the difficult moments in which we are now navigating to do the work that needs to be done, and because we're all trying to do our best in this context. The question is that I know you mentioned, says a question, a bunch of other organizations claiming that they are following the PYD model. What, in your opinion, has been the closest to the 4-H in being in kind of like in how they're implementing and following it?
That's a question for Rich, because he's evaluated most of them.
Well, the United States Military Academy at West Point invited us up to do that. So excluding that,
Yeah.
basically I was asked to do for West Point what we had done for 4-H in terms of promoting character and leadership among the cadets at West Point. We had a 5-year project looking at 3 different classes of cadets. So we published a lot from that as well. Obviously, the Army is an organization very different, but they deal, people enter as 18-year-old adolescents, and 47 months later, they graduate as commissioned second lieutenants in the United States Army. So how does that happen? And so we were able to help them. Now, frankly, we had a huge grant from the John Templeton Foundation to do that project. But I would say the youth serving organization, conventional, not United States Army, would be what used to be the Boy Scouts of America. They were very oriented to that, and Girl Scouts USA. Mary, you were involved in at least the Girl Scouts part. Now, both of those studies, both of those projects have been transformed because of the nature of both of those organizations have been transformed since the time of our projects with them, because Boy Scouts is now Scouting USA, and Girl Scouts has had to change because what used to be Boy Scouts now includes girls in it. So all of those, and there was a huge settlement that had to be adjudicated with what was Boy Scouts of America. So those organizations have changed, but I would say Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the remnants of those two scouting organizations, and Boys and Girls Clubs would be on my list.
Yes, I think the missions of all of those that Rich mentioned are similar to 4-H, and probably have a more unified kind of training model. I've noticed in my research with my master's students who take the PYD class, and one of their main projects is to find a PYD program and then evaluate it in whether it's doing PYD. Some of the other ones, and this is not to badmouth the Y or those more I don't even have to call them general. Some of them are really walking the walk and talking the talk and putting 4-H, PYD in everything they do, but it doesn't seem to be as unified in terms of across. I'll have one student who says, "Oh wow, I found PYD everywhere from soup to nuts in this YMCA, and then in this one I couldn't find anything going on. It was all deficit model and just babysitting, etc." So I think you have to look closely at how the communities kind of approach what they're doing at each one. And I think Scouting and Big Brothers and Boys and Girls Club definitely has embraced the PYD model in a more systematic way. And I've linked a couple of things of Hawkins and Catalano, communities that care, evaluation, etc.
So one question I have for you: how do you foresee the use of social media by youth impacting the 4-H model? And what are ways to pivot and consider how the messaging from social media affect youth?
Well, I don't know who wants to speak first. I believe that social media is both positive and negative, and it all depends on, how it's being used and what the mindset is of youth who are engaged with it. I've had a lot of discussions, teach adolescents, I teach adulthood, I teach mental health students all the time who are concerned about this. 4-H has a big social media presence, I think, in terms of engaging people in rural communities, and it's had a positive effect. I don't know if that's what you mean in terms of the club, has it had a positive effect on, helping youth see the power of these youth serving organizations because of the social media presence, or if you're asking more like effects of social media on individual youth as they're going through the programs.
The question was posed by a participant, but I think it's a good one for us to consider, and a good moment then to plug in and send you all to see the recording of our wonderful conference we completed last Friday, where we have over 400 participants from about 10 or 12 countries around the world on social media safety. And we had Mitch Princeton from APA, and a graduate also of the University of Miami, who presented on basically on the impact of social media on brain development, as well, both the positive and the negative aspects of it. And we had also a scholar from the UK, Yvonne Skipper, that had developed programs very much in line with the positive youth development model to teach kids how to detect fake news on social media. So I encourage you to go and look at this. The recording is already there, both the totality of the event, the full day event, as well as the individual talks. And you, since you're interested on that, and you can probably use it in your class, Jacqueline, the talk by Mitch was, you might know him, he was phenomenal. He's the director of research for APA. So
Yes,
yes.
yes. Oh, I'll be very interested to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I think I'd like to maybe bring us to a close of the event, and before closing, just I wanted to really extend a big thank to you, Richard, Jackie, and Mary, for the time that you spent with us today, for sharing the valuable insights of your work with us today, and for providing inspiration and confirmation for those of us who have really been attempting to move the needle day in and day out for years. So you can also explore all of our free resources through the TMI link library. Through there, you can visit our YouTube channel, where you can upload all of our courses for easy access and sharing. And if you haven't already, again, go back and check the social media challenge, research-based strategies to protect mind and strengthen communities. The recordings are there. With every session, every resource we share, and every connection we make, we're strengthening our collective ability to protect minds and build safer, more resilient communities. We thank you again for being part of today's session. Together, we're making a difference. Thank you again to our colleagues and friends from Boston College and Tufts, and Mary. Good to have a new friend now in the network, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to collaborate. As I said, we get requests following this, and I'll be reaching out to you for your assistance and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Etione. We're honored to be here.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for doing the hard work out there.
Take care.